Dana, James, hello from the other side. How are you guys feeling?
I'm trying to grapple with it and wrestle with it. It's still sinking in, processing, just like, so many Americans. It does sort of feel like we're stuck in this age of Trump that really started in June 2015 and is now going to go until at least January 2029. And it's like, whether you like him or not, he's the dominant figure, not just in American politics, but in American life. And, I think coming to terms with that this wasn't an aberration, that maybe this is who we are as a country.
Okay, James, I have to say three things. Number one, I'm really sorry that you said January 2029. That does not work for me as a concept. Number two, this is supposed to be the light side of the podcast, all right?
Oh, sorry. No, I was hoping
people a little reason to smile. You have failed.
Well, Dana hopefully has whiskey in his Wheaties. And
number three, I talked about this when we gathered was it last week? Was it just yesterday? I can't even remember. I myself have hit the Halloween candy and the quote unquote
John didn't give it away.
No, I didn't give it to him to give it away. So the fun size Snickers do not feel like so much fun, but I tore open another bag this morning.
Calories don't count. This is the equivalent of an airport lounge, where you can, no one's going to judge you.
The new airport lounge is my closet where we're recording this from. Dana, you try to make up for Hohmann's failures here.
Well, in my house, we had, I think, 5 pints of Ben & Jerry's in the freezer for our little family watch party. So we got our way through that. I think that's what kept me out of the whiskey. I'm pleased to report. So that's why I'm still with you.
And is there enough room under the bed to eat the ice cream? Because that's what you told us.
It's one of those raised platform things, so it's really quite roomy. I can get the laptop down there and a little bit of cellular reception. I think I can spend the next 4 years under there.
This is Impromptu from Washington Post Opinions. I'm Ruth Marcus, a columnist, and today we're here to talk about Donald Trump's victory last night and what that means for the country. And I'm back with my colleagues, Dana Milbank and James Hohmann. Like many of you listeners, we are still processing all of this. And good morning, guys.
Morning, Ruth.
Good morning. Or morning, I guess I should say. Morning, not good morning.
What the heck happened yesterday?
Well, for those listeners who are just tuning in to the election coverage, it appears that...
Okay, I don't mean what happened. I mean, why did it happen? Take me seriously, not literally.
Why did it happen? People will be sorting through that for, days, months, years to come. Trump once again brought out new voters. But didn't think there could be more for him in the rural areas, and he managed to do that. And Harris did not bring out enough of her base. That's sort of the top line. I think it's really important to say that there would be lots of recriminations about all the mistakes Harris made in this and that. I think that's kind of besides the point. I think this is larger than any of that, and it goes to what James was saying just a moment ago, that we wake up today realizing that we don't live in the country that we had hoped we were living in, that Americans had their eyes wide open about what Trump planning to do with mass deportations and firing of tens of thousands of civil servants and just right on down the line,
rounding us up.
Yeah, right. Rounding up
or shooting us,
rounding up journalists and political opponents, and they said, "All right, we're good with that." That's sort of the big picture. And I don't think it's like, well, if she'd picked a different running mate, it is possible. If it were a white guy, things would have turned out differently. But that too says something. That's not about Harris. That's about the United States of America right now. So I think there'll be a lot of questions about where do the Democrats go from here. But it's really a question about where does the country go from here.
I agree with all of that. I do think that there is this realignment that Trump has accelerated, and Democrats have to figure out how to connect with working class whites, Latinos, and African Americans. And I think I agree with Dana that it's like beside the point to sort of focus on like where Harris spent her time or who her VP was. But
whether
I think
she said something on The View or
right,
not.
exactly. I mean, and I do think that Joe Biden, there were headwinds. The fundamentals really were against Democrats. It's just hard when 70% of the country thinks we're on the wrong track and fewer than 40% approve of the incumbent president. It's hard to overcome that. But even the final 10 days of the campaign with the Puerto Rico garbage back and forth, I understand why it is really offensive. I understand why Democrats capitalized on it. There are a lot of Puerto Rican voters in Pennsylvania. But when you look at the Latinos did move, and it didn't just happen in the swing states. In a place like Texas, there are counties that Democrats have won every election since 1892, where Trump won by double digits. Clearly, those Latinos aren't a monolith. Clearly, those voters didn't feel like the Puerto Rican joke affected their lives. And, they do care about inflation and immigration. And I do think Democrats have to figure out how to reach these people. You can't win national elections just with college-educated white people. I think, we'll have a lot of recriminations, but I think there's going to be a robust 2028 debate. And I think also one of the problems is Democrats don't sufficiently tolerate dissent. And it's one of the reasons we got stuck in the Biden mess, because it was, you were bullied for sort of saying, like, are you sure Biden is up for running for another term? And I feel like that the not brooking dissent in sort of the Democratic establishment is one of the reasons that we ended up in this mess.
Is it? I mean,
not like I don't want to overly blame it. I mean, push back, please.
Well, I am grappling with this and horrified by this because I think, and you have alluded to this. For me, this is us election.
Right.
Are we really the country that Donald Trump describes? Are we as ugly and vicious to our neighbors? Are we as uncaring about the world? Are we just as selfish as Donald Trump describes us as? And the results would suggest, alas, yes. The notion that Donald Trump didn't just win probably because of a antiquated artifact of this stupid electoral college, but actually may have probably won the popular vote, is a very, very scary thought. And that, to me, I agree with. We're going to have recriminations, and certainly Democrats will have recriminations because they're really good at that. But I think this is more about our national zeitgeist and a kind of X-ray of our national soul than it is about, as I said before, whether Kamala Harris could adequately distance herself from Joe Biden on The View. And that is really what scares me most. And
I mean, one of the things that really alarmed me was the young people. I mean, the exit polls show Trump won 18 to 29-year-olds in Michigan. I mean, that's that sort of makes you wonder about is this who we are? This isn't just people over 65 who are trying to reach back for a country that they feel is slipping away from them.
And why? Is it just that people get PO'd when they go to the grocery store and their cornflakes cost $6.99?
And the price of bacon has quintupled, as Trump liked to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in the global sense that on the one hand, what you're saying, Ruth, is true. I think this shows us that 2016 was not the aberration. Probably 2020 was the aberration, and basically that was 2016 redux. last night. So I think that does say some grim things about where we are as a country. But I don't want to get too carried away with that because, basically we're looking at, 50-50 outcome in the popular vote. We're looking at 50-50 in the House, within a couple of seats of that in the Senate. So this is where a majority of the country is right now, but it's a very thin majority. As James was talking about, it's if the economy were different, we may well have had a different outcome here. But I think that it's less.
The economy is really good.
That's what I'm saying. It's less about the economy than perceptions of the economy. So if people were asked, "How are you doing?" the numbers were very high. I'm doing fine. But if they ask your perception of the economy in general, they're very low. And this is where I think the disinformation vacuum we're living in is. So we're now at 2.5% inflation. Was 4 years of straight jobs growth, strong GDP growth, and yet 2/3 of Americans say that the economy is in the toilet. So there's a whole lot of I don't want to minimize the economic strains that Americans are under, but there's a whole lot of disinformation out there, and that's just in one area. So. I want on the one hand, I want to say, yes, it is a pretty grim portrait of who Americans are, but we also have to acknowledge that a whole lot of people are not being given a clear picture of what's going on.
James, do you have anything to add to the why question?
I have a lot. It is the manosphere outreach by Trump clearly paid dividends, and one of the striking trends of the Trump era, and Dana got at this at the top, is like there's always more rural voters to squeeze out, and it turns out there's always more. I think on our Monday impromptu, I was like the vaping guy and the crypto guy, and those people appear to have voted for Trump and actually come out, and so the Trump message that. Kamala Harris is for they, them. Donald Trump is for you. I think that is going to be remembered as an effective, if divisive, message, and it did motivate some of these people. One of the more effective ads that I heard brought up on the trail was this in 2019. Kamala Harris is on tape saying that there should be taxpayer-funded sex change surgeries for transgender inmates. And they have this clip of Charlemagne the God saying, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to pay for that. I don't want to pay for that. And when I was at a tailgate talking to voters, including black men in Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago, people were like mentioning that ad. And so I think that what happened in 2017, 18, 19 was there was sort of this like Trump was so awful that there was this reaction, and it ended up prompting Harris and others to like stake out these positions that then made it harder to win this year. And again, I think this is an election about Trump. It was a referendum on Trump, but I think that there's a lesson there as we think about the next 4 years.
Mm. And you used the phrase manosphere, and so here we are. Who better to ask than two white guys about the role of race and gender?
I'm not sure James and I are exactly the specimens of the manosphere that Trump had in mind.
You may not be. You go to the manosphere with the podcast bros you got. That's how I think about it. So what role did Kamala Harris's race and gender play in all of this? And I ask that from the perspective of someone who has written not one, but two spiked columns, one in 2016 and one just yesterday about the magnificent election of the first woman president.
We could have like a book of your columns, of your spiked columns of like the America that wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, if only by Ruth Marcus.
No, you have a sort of a little subspecialty, and that's terrific. Look, I think it's not to dismiss all the other things we're talking about, but obviously race and gender were a huge role here. I mean, you just only have to look at Harris was outperformed down the ballot all over the place by Senate candidates and House candidates, not just in certain regions, but universally. And I don't see what else this could be suggesting.
And I worry, I mean, I agree there is sexism in the country. There's a lot of misogyny in the country. There's obviously racism in the country, though we did elect Barack Obama twice. I worry that the wrong-headed reaction, I mean, it again, to Dana's point, it was basically a 50-ish election. And, women did turn out and vote. And, I think it would be a mistake for Democrats to say, oh, let's not nominate a woman again in 2028. But that it would be wrong to pretend that there's not a lot of misogyny in the country.
Yeah, I don't know. All else equal, if I'm a Democrat, which I'm not, and if I care about regaining the White House, am I going to say, been there, done that two
Twice.
times? Maybe. Isn't it true that that Kamala Harris did not outperform Joe Biden with women, and this after Dobbs?
It's true.
Yeah. All right. On that cheery note, guys, stick around. We're going to take a break, and we will be back after that. Welcome back. I'm Ruth Marcus, and this is Impromptu. Because I'm grasping at straws here, I'm looking for any silver linings. And, one silver lining you guys have suggested is, despite everything, the numerical closeness, though not close, not 2020 close, of this election, is there anything else positive that anybody can scrounge up to mention?
It's not out of the realm of possibility that Democrats could still retake the House. I think that's less likely than likely, but still possible. And, here's a bit of a hope, maybe Pollyannish hope that I've been clinging to in the last several sleepless hours. Trump is done running, unless he becomes dictator on day one and sticks with that plan and president for life, he's done running for elections. So, there is a chance, I don't want to overplay this, but there is a chance that he moderates at this point.
Huh.
There's a chance, Ruth.
Wait, and I'm sorry, Dana.
You asked for a silver. You can't. I'm giving you a little ray of sunshine, and you can't, come over with your storm cloud and just immediately rain on it.
Here is my storm cloud.
He has never been attached to ideology. He does whatever is necessary. So it is possible that, what he's really after is some sort of an adulation, and he will pivot in such a way that will be to aggrandize Trump at the expense of some of the crazy things he said he was going to do. Now, of course, he's also bringing in a whole lot of people who are very serious about doing all the crazy things he said he was going to do, and he's not bringing in anybody who's going to push back against that. So I don't want to get carried away with it, but it's just like that small reed I'm clinging to.
So cling away, but I think I do have to, and I did, lure you into little shoots of hope here. But I do have to say, in 2016, I thought it was possible to retain some optimism and give Trump the benefit of the doubt that he would not govern as he had vowed to govern during the campaign, and that he would, for various reasons, moderate. I see no basis for that hope this time around, even though I agree with you that he's more or less devoid of ideology. But his authoritarian tendencies have been, if anything, enhanced by the absence of people around him who will counter him, enhanced by the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, enhanced by, I think, his increasing unhingedness. So I go into Trump 2 much less dewy-eyed, such as it were, than Trump 1. But James, it's your turn to say something quasi-optimistic, but not completely laughable.
Well, we talked about the misogyny in the country, but it is an exciting moment that Angela Alsobrooks and Lisa Blunt Rochester, two impressive African-American women, were both elected to the Senate, both young, will be there a long time. Andy Kim, Asian-American who's only 42, elected to what was Robert Menendez's seat. So there is a bench, there is a future. And the abortion initiatives, even in Florida, it failed because it didn't get a supermajority, but it had majority support. The abortion initiatives passed in Arizona and Nevada, and then here in
Missouri, right?
And Missouri,
yeah.
And here in D.C., the Initiative 83 passed, which allows for open primaries or semi-open primaries and ranked choice voting, which actually is kind of my political dorky side think will be good for making the D.C. local government more responsive to the people. So that's a silver lining.
Okay, nothing personal, Dana, but that was a much better answer on optimism than yours.
I was trying to give people a little sunshine, and you rained on it.
All right.
I mean, Trump. Let me. And Dana's. Can I defend Dana for a second? Because
you can.
I'm eyes open, and I'm not naive, and I don't think we should be naive, and I don't think we should take the kind of like we expect that he will, grow into the job the way like Barack Obama said in when he handed over the reins. But he has the credibility to do kind of the Nixon to China thing. Like he could cut a grand bargain on immigration that no other Republican could, because he can push his base, and they'll obviously there would be some resistance, and I'm not sure it would happen, and I think it would get torpedoed by the nativists and the xenophobes that he surrounds himself with. But there is some Nixon to China possibility. If he wants to be the statesman. I don't think that,
I didn't know Richard Nixon, but I'm pretty sure he's no Richard Nixon.
Well, thank you, James, for trying to defend my integrity.
Yeah, nice
try. All right,
try,
Ruth, can I try another one?
You can, but I also want to save us some time to talk about the House, because that's my current obsession.
All right, I'll say it in 10 seconds. Mark Robinson and Michelle Morrow, the Looney Tune public instruction lady in North Carolina, they both lost. So it does suggest that while Trump can get away with as much lunacy as he likes, not true for every other Republican.
Okay.
Thank you.
Point accepted. Dana talked about the House already. James, can you give us your assessment? Because for me, this is where I'm putting all my thoughts and prayers, as they say, is the notion that Democrats retake the House and that there is some guardrail, some limitation on Trump's ability to run rampant across the landscape.
It's way too close to call, and it's annoying because California takes days and the majority could end up coming down to these California seats. I talked to a Republican House strategist this morning who said that he thinks they're going to end up with 221 to 222. You need 218 for a majority. So they think they're going to end up with Republicans end up with a narrow majority. But it's weird because there were two Democratic incumbents, Matt Cartwright and Susan Wild, who were both trailing. Last I checked in Pennsylvania, Democrats in sort of these swing districts. But their potential defeats were like offset by Democrats picking up a couple seats in New York, and they probably will pick up one or two or three in California. So it may end up. I mean, it's just such a tiny Republican majority. It's hard to predict, but I think it's still a jump ball, but advantage Republicans. And I mean, you're right, Ruth, that a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries is much, has a huge impact on a Trump 2.0. But even a narrow Republican majority, which is what they would end up with, a lot of the kind of the Trump resistors are going to be gone. But I'm not of the mind that we're never going to have another election in this country. And I do think like we'll have elections in 2026. And if Trump does half the crazy stuff he's saying, like a 20% tariff or the sort of mass deportations he's talking about, I do think Democrats would be positioned for historic gains, not in the Senate where the map is bad in 26, but certainly in the House.
On that note, I'm going to thank both of you, James and Dana, for joining me for another episode of Impromptu. Let's do this again in 4 years. I'm sure it'll go by just like that.
Good plan, Ruth.
This episode was produced by Hadley Robinson, edited by Demir Marusik, Chris Sullentrop, and Allison Michaels, and mixed by Emma Munger. Chris Rucan designed our art. Special thanks to Millie Mitra and Deirdre Byrne. Thanks for listening to Impromptu. Tell us what you're thinking about the election results by emailing impromptu@washpost.com.